Today's webinar is titled, Why Not You? Breaking into the Director Role, presented by our wonderful panel. We are joined by Dr. Michael Miller, Dr. Bill Young, Dr. Ryan Batenhorst, Dr. Megan Corry, and Jeff McDonald. I'm going to pass it over now to Dr. Miller. Thank you all so much for being here with us today to share your knowledge and experience with us, and we look forward to the presentation.
Thanks so much, Rio, for getting us kicked off today. Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us from wherever you happen to be. I hope you're safe and warm if you're in wintry land. It's a pleasure to be able to help moderate today's panel of esteemed colleagues here, all program directors, to talk a little bit about the program director role, and perhaps it's something that you are currently in that role, but newer to your role. Perhaps there's some salient points that the group can share with you. And maybe you're somebody who is not sure about whether or not you want to be a program director or what it takes to become a program director. And that is something that you're thinking about doing at some point in your career in the future. I'll tell you that we need program directors. We need great educators that are aspiring to move on to that next level. So again, hopefully there will be some good takeaway messages here for you today. So I want to give folks on the screen an opportunity to introduce themselves and say hello as well. My name is Mike Miller, Assistant Director at COA EMSP. Before that, which I've been in that role a little over 4 years, a longtime program director. I'm going to toss it over here to Megan Corry, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I'm Megan Corry. I'm from San Francisco, and I am the program director at City College of San Francisco. And I started in 2003 in that role. So it's been a while. I'm kind of going through the transition now to help with succession planning for my successor.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Dr. Young.
You're muted.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Young. I'm the program director at Eastern Kentucky University. I just finished in June my 50th year in EMS. So that means I started when I was 2 years old. Happy to be here from a secure, undisclosed location in West Texas.
Great. Thanks, Bill. And Jeff McDonald.
Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. I am currently just north of Galveston, Texas, where I've been a program director between 3 colleges for about 35 years and currently work with the COA and NAEMSE, and those are 2 of my greatest achievements, and happy to be here today.
Thanks, Jeff. And Dr. Ryan Batenhorst.
Thanks, Mike. Like I said, Ryan Batenhorst, I currently serve as the program director at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. Been in the program director role off and on since 2009 at a couple of different places in the community college realm and now in the university realm. So thanks. Excited to be here.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. So you guys, I want this to be conversational. So I'm going to try to keep us on track. But to start off our first segment here, I want to talk a little bit about the role of being a program director and what that's like from your vantage point and your perspective. And Bill, if I can start with you, I'm just wondering, I think sometimes people don't always understand what the role is all about, but I think it is really, really critical. It's paramount to the success of a program. And I'm just wondering if you might talk about why it is such a critical role for programs.
Well, I'm a firm believer that no organization rises above their leadership. And so the program director is really, really important because much like a wagon wheel, everything flows into the program director. Now, many times we talk about the challenges and the struggles of being a program director, but I got to tell you, I really enjoy being a PD. And much of that is because I have the responsibility to make sure I take care of my faculty, that I make sure that I take care of my students so that they can go out and be a success. Now, obviously, you can tell I've been around in EMS for a while. And so what I'm looking for right now is more than anything in the world is, have I done what I've been put on this earth to do? And I feel like being the program director is part of a divine plan for me to be able to say, you know, that medic that's out there that's doing a lot more and doing cooler things than I could ever do. I helped train that person and I helped make sure that the program was there available for that student, he or she to go through. Got physicians that are practicing today that I can say had a part in that as the program director. And so I think for me, that's why it's so important. I'm actually on my second go round now as a PD.
Great. And what are some qualities that you think are important for a successful program director?
Wow, that's great. Think of any positive quality that you can think of, and that's what you're going to need. You know, I think one of the things that you have to have is humility. Trust me, even within the last 24 or 48 hours, I've made some pretty big mistakes, and you got to be able to own those and then learn from them. The other thing I think you have to do is that when you're dealing with your faculty and your students, you have to be willing to say, you know, I was wrong. I can think back on an initiative that we started about 10 years ago at EKU, and I was pushing it forward. It wasn't time for it. Didn't matter. I was going to push it forward, and it failed dramatically. That was all on me. And so I think you have to have humility, you have to have patience. But the other thing I think that you have to be able to do is that when the good things happen, you have to be willing to accept credit, not take credit, but accept the credit that other people's come and share with you of saying, you know, you're doing a good job and this good thing happened and it happened because of you. We share that credit, but again, we have to be willing to accept and say, oh, well, I did have a role in that.
Great. Thanks so much for that. Ryan, I want to turn to you here. We talk about the role of being a program director, and Bill's kind of provided us some idea of what that kind of looks like. But there's no doubt some people in the audience that are listening to this that are currently instructors, or in some other role to support a program. So how does the program director's role differ from what a lead instructor, a clinical coordinator, a lab simulation instructor, how does it differ from what those people are doing?
Well, I think the very quick answer is that depending on the program, they don't. Some programs, the program director is all of those and more. That said, I think when that's not the case, I think that there's some real opportunity in the program director role. I think you have to be supportive of those people as well. But I also, my feeling on this, as I was thinking about different things about the program director role, I think aside from the obvious that, you know, the instructor is focused more in the classroom, the program director is focused more on the management, et cetera, et cetera. I think, though, part of that has to be about vision and the program director as a visionary and to see where the program is going to be or going to go in 5 years or beyond, or even in 6 months. Just how do you drive that bus, if you will? And I think the aside from that vision, I think the program director is also responsible for the culture. And how do you drive the culture that is your program? And what does that look like? How do you create collaboration rather than commiseration? I think it's really easy to be part of that as the program director, especially if you've moved into that role and you were first a colleague and now the leader, which can be challenging. I think you'll understand and appreciate the reason behind meetings and the amount of them and why they're necessary, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, a necessary evil, if you will. And I think ultimately, too, the program director is largely responsible for the relationships that the program fosters with the students, with the administration of the college or university, not to mention the field sites, the clinical sites. Those relationships are a big part of the program director role. Now, I know I've kind of talked about the soft side of this. That really isn't the soft side, but the important side that I think moves the program forward from a visionary perspective, along with the outcomes and those things as well. So I think that is a really big place. But I think there's other things that are less obvious that I didn't realize till I was in this role.
Great. You've covered a ton of ground there. So I wonder if you have any, one or two suggestions about how program directors go about setting the vision, what strategies might they utilize to think about the future in planning for those kinds of things?
Wow, great question. I think from my perspective, how I did that was I remember working clinically and thinking about gaps and where were the gaps in my education? Where were the gaps in my practice? Where were the gaps in the programs that were around the areas where I practice clinically? And how can I, as a program director, work to meet those gaps? I don't want to say that I thought about all the holes in paramedicine and thought, well, I'm going to fix those. But I also wanted to say that I looked for that of, if this didn't work very well when I was out there practicing, what can I do as a leader within an educational program to address those and talk to my students from a perspective of an experience perspective as well as an academic to make those to I don't know, close those holes or gaps, if you will.
Great. So I think people are hearing that there's a lot of different things that are going on, Jeff, for the role of a program director. Ryan's been talking about strategic planning, being visionary. That there are, of course, the day-to-day logistical things that need to get done. Bill has talked about what some of his students have gone on to accomplish. So I think it's intuitive to people for them to understand that there are administrative duties as well as other things that are going on, that the instruction, it things related to accreditation, all those other kinds of operational things. So how does a program director approach the job or the role from balancing all these different things that need to get done?
And that's a tough thing because we have programs of various sizes all across this country. As Ryan said, sometimes the program director is also the clinical coordinator, the instructor, the lead instructor, the lab instructor. And we have other programs that are large enough that the clinical instructor or the program director may not even see students on a weekly basis, which is kind of sad and disappointing in some ways. But I think the first thing you have to do when you become the program director is you have to let go and you have to let the faculty do their job. And you have to have trust in them. You can't be in the classroom as much when you now have administrative duties. And the administrative duties your first couple of months to years in the program will be much more than they are later on because you're still learning how to do them. You're gathering the information to get those reports ready to go. You're trying to think ahead where once you get used to that, it becomes a little bit easier to do. But we have to somehow maintain the fact that even if I'm the program director, I still have to realize that this is all about the students. And I think from a program director standpoint, we also have to realize that from the teaching standpoint, it's all about the faculty. How do I develop the faculty so that I can let go and let them do their job? And I have to find the right people and then I have to trust them to do what needs to be done. And will they be perfect their first year and first class out of the box? Probably not. None of us were. So what do we do to tweak that and build up their capabilities to become better educators? And the first thing I think we need to do is convince them that just because we've always done it that way doesn't make it right. We have to teach them that there's things that need to be done better today. I don't know where my faculty went to school. They weren't always taught everything perfect. If they went to my school, they weren't always taught everything perfect. So it's a balance, and part of that balance is to let go. You have to let the people below you do their job. Hopefully you have some people below you, and if you don't, well, then you just have to work really hard to do everything that's supposed to be done. And I think we've all been in that position as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for that. I think that that's a great point. This whole notion of letting go. And EMS people, that's not necessarily something that's easy for us to do. We've always, wanted to keep our finger on that pulse and stuff. I wonder if you have any suggestions, if you think back to when you were transitioning from perhaps a faculty role to a program director, what did you do in order to be able to, in some ways, cut that tie and let go and let others bloom and blossom and kind of take over and become their own instructor.
And that's a hard thing to do sometimes. The best thing to do is just sit back. And I used to tell the students this when you finally get a pulse back in a cardiac arrest, sit back and sit on your hands because we always want to try to do something. And sometimes what we're doing is not right, but we're doing something. And I think the same thing when you let a faculty member teach, sit back and let them teach. And then have a kind of an after action discussion of, hey, next time, think about, where you're standing in the classroom, where you're standing when you demonstrate a skill. Let them have their failures and then identify them themselves. Half the time they already found all their flaws. Rather than harp on them, just ask them how they would change it the next time. And you just have to allow students to make mistakes and allow faculty who are learning to be faculty to make mistakes. It's really the same thing. I think that's the wonderful thing about being a program director is who my students are really just changed. It's not just the ones who signed up for EMT and paramedic classes. It's also my brand new faculty that are coming in that I get to develop and turn into new faculty. And I hope what I'm doing is making them want my job rather than fear my job. Because I think that's what this is all about. How do we get the new guy to want to be the program director? So many times people say, oh man, I don't want the boss's job. Well, then I'm not doing a very good job of showing you how easy it can be because it really is a great job. And I'd like to see more people want to step up and do that.
Great, thank you. So I want to switch gears here just a little bit and talk about some of the skills that are, I think, required or important in order to be successful in the role of the leader of an academic or an educational program, and perhaps what you all went through in order to best prepare yourselves for the roles that you've been in now for a number of years. So Megan, I guess to start this off, what was the point in your career? What helped you discern, or how did you know that the program director role was a good fit for you and it was something that you were going to go after?
I have to say it's because of other people. There were just key people all throughout my career who encouraged me and mentored me and supported me. And when it came to this program, I I received phone calls from a few different people. I'm an EMT program director that I'd known for many years, saying you have to come over and start working for us. You've got to you'll be really great in this job, and some other people that have been really key, who really encouraged me and saw something. I really didn't know the program director role when I came on. It was really, like Ryan had said earlier, it was sort of the thrown into the classroom, and here you are with your 40 students, and great, run a program. And so trial by fire. But there were people, I had so much support around me. I think that made such a huge difference. So key people really, I think, was the major thing.
Great. Yeah, I love it. Now, we talk a bit about qualities of somebody that's in such a role. And look, they vary from person to person. And I think one thing that you learn is that, especially if you've been in a position where you are going into a role after somebody is exiting the role, there's
Mhm.
oftentimes a tendency to make comparisons there. And I think you have to be your own person. But that said, are there specific qualities that you saw in yourself, or that perhaps the people that were around you nudging you that direction saw in you that thought that you would be a successful and effective program director? What were those qualities?
I think early on, I used to say to people, I feel like a cruise director, meaning like, I'm not the captain of the ship, but I know how to find everything that the passengers need. You know, it was, so I think connections and communication is absolutely key, and connecting different communities, being able to have connections in the community, being able to connect students to whatever they need individually, faculty with what they need to do their job, yourself to be able to figure out how to do the job. I also think I tend to be a person, and I see this on a lot of program directors, for better or for worse, people who don't know how to say no. So we say yes to a lot of things, and that can be challenging. But when you do say yes to a lot of things and you end up on your college's curriculum committee or the career and technical education committee or whatever, you also find that you expand your vision and you get to understand, the needs of your sponsoring organization, and that helps your program. So I think that keeping that in mind, and then also it made it easier for things like um, change, using evidence to drive change. Your institution, if you're at a college, does the same process. So being able to marry the processes that happen through accreditation and the processes that happen through program review at the college, that made it, all of a sudden it was like a light bulb going on. Well, they're the same process. So if we just put them together, then I'm doing the same thing. It's quality improvement. So I think that just making those connections really helped.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Right now, I want to turn to you, somewhat of a follow-up, but the same line here. From your perspective, we've all had mentors over our careers and those kinds of things, but what qualities or skills, I guess, have you come to appreciate that make leaders most effective, whether or not it's a program director or a supervisor on an ambulance service, a captain on the fire department, whatever the case may be? What kinds of qualities or skills do you think are most effective from a leadership perspective?
You did say Ryan on that, right?
I did.
All right, good. Good. Wow. So again, I think I can go with what everyone has said so far. I mean, there's so many things, and had a mentor here at the university tell me something that I've put on a sticky note, and it's sitting like on my computer that says, "Don't just do something, sit there." And that's really great for me because I think as a leader, you want to do everything and you want to be a part of everything and you want to be involved in everything, which gives kind of a weird vibe, if you will, to your faculty. Like, oh gosh, if they're sending me emails at 8 o'clock, maybe I'm supposed to be doing that. Or maybe I should get involved in more things. And now I feel like I'm not doing anything. So I think you have to feel the pulse of your faculty and your people. And I think you have to be able to relate to them by knowing them and knowing what they need. And that those sort of things happen by connecting with them, and having genuine connection, I think is really important. I think I think that faculty want to be heard and want to know that you care is at the end of the day, just like students struggle and just want to know that our job is not to get them kicked out of school, that we truly care and want them to be successful, and our faculty feel the same way. So
Great. Thanks for that. Yeah, I know. I remember back to my days as a program director, one of my things that I always tried to do for faculty and others was to remove barriers. Whenever they were running into a brick wall on something, it felt my job was to try to remove that, to help support them and advocate for them whenever I can, and in large part for the entirety of the program as well. Jeff, we've heard some comments here through the conversation. Bill talked about something that I always thought was really, really cool in the role of being a program director. Even as an educator, seeing your students go on and accomplish so many awesome, great things is one of the things to celebrate that I always found really rewarding. To see somebody who was in the paramedic program that's now a medical director of an ambulance service as a physician, doing other great things, gone on and gotten a PhD and is now a key researcher doing cool stuff from that perspective. But expand on that. What are some of the things that the role, how was it rewarding for you? What were the things that you found or took away as really, really gratifying about being a program director?
And you're pointing toward the legacy that we have of what we leave behind. The little bitty things, and I have one of the guys I worked with, as he was one of my adjuncts in Galveston, is now a physician in Austin. He's in the first year of residency. And he texted me the other day. He said, I was repeating your words as I was taking care of a patient as a physician. And I've had several students who have kind of come back and told me that no matter what they've done as an educator, as a care provider, as a paramedic, and a supervisor, as a physician, those words sometimes echo in their head. And I think that's really kind of a nice thing. That's rewarding to me that I had an impact in, well, that person's life, but in essence, that translated to the patients they're caring for. And that's the big part. It's very nice. And, unfortunately, it took a lot of time to get here. Like Bill, we've been in this for a very long time. You don't do this in your second year as a program director. But I have graduates who are physicians. I have graduates who are fire chiefs. I've got graduates who are retired because they've been in this business so long they've done that. That to me is a very rewarding part. It's about the legacy that we impart on other people. That is the fun part. The challenges sometimes are that you see students who have greater potential and they don't live up to it. You find people that you thought were really kind of on the bubble of being somebody good, and unfortunately that bubble popped and they didn't become that person. To me, that's a challenge, and usually this occurs. We see it with students, the student who is barely passing and then finally doesn't. You have faculty that are really struggling trying to do the job, but they just don't have it. And one of the things I think we forget about being faculty is that affective domain is really a strong component. It's strong in EMS in general, but for faculty, we have to be able to tell somebody that your kids are ugly and make them smile about it. And that's a hard thing to do. So, the challenges are, how do we find that one person? Because when that challenge succeeds, and you can look at them and say, I remember that student struggled all through school, and now they're applying to medical school, or now they're a supervisor, or now they're a chief. Those are rewards that started as a challenge, and those are the best ones.
Yeah, I think back to a colleague in Mentor a long, long time ago. I was struggling a bit about this whole, I was leaving the bedside in clinical practice, which most of us got into EMS because of that. And then we found ourselves as educators or management in an ambulance service or doing other kinds of things. And it was always that challenge. I was struggling a bit with that. And the individual that was talking with me said, but Mike, you gotta recognize the multiplier that your current role is having, the amplification that you are bringing
It's exponential
to patient care through your students. And for some reason, as soon as I heard that, it clicked, and it's like, this is incredibly meaningful, and this is where I'm meant to be right now in my career. So thanks for that. I appreciate that. Bill, I guess let's transition just a little bit and say, okay, now you got the job, but let's say you're somebody that's new in this role of being a program director, and you got all the ingredients there, but maybe they need to be adjusted or aligned a little bit here, or maybe there are some skill gaps that do need to be filled in. Where does a program director go, or an aspiring program director go, to fill in their repertoire of skills in order to be the most effective program director that they can be? You don't go into this job with all of it. You pick things up along the way. How does that happen?
So that's a great question. And one of the really good answers to that is that there are more resources now to answer that very question than there ever have been. And the thing, first of all, you got to understand, I grew up in the hills of Kentucky, and so my mom would always say, well, that person puts his pants on just like you do. So the first thing you got to understand is that when you need to pick up the phone and you need to call COA to talk to Dr. Miller or Dr. Hatch or Dr. Cook or any of the other people in there, you will get a response. Now, it may not be the response that you want, but you're going to find that everybody at COA is approachable. Now, I don't I do site visits, but I'm not employed by COA, so I don't have any problem saying that with a clear conscience. Second thing is go to your peers. We got a great Google group that's out there right now that gets active different types of the year, and so you ask questions and you ask for help. And one of the things I love about this Google group is that there's no ego in there. So if you ask a question, no one's going to say, you know what? That's what the first week program director should know. No, instead, what they do is they answer your question, they give you the resources, and you move on. The other thing I would tell you is networking is critical. The saying is misery loves company. Well, the reason being is that there are times when this job can become a burden. So if I can pick up the phone and I can go to Jeff and I can say, hey, Jeff, I'm struggling here, man. I need some help. I know Jeff's going to listen to me. And here's the other thing I know is that Jeff is going to have gone through something similar. So again, from basically all around, either from COA, from within your organization, and also from without, you got peers. And again, it doesn't matter how long or how short you've been in this, and it doesn't matter how big or how small your program is, you gotta talk to people. And you gotta find out that, yep, they're doing and they're struggling with the same thing that you are. But the other thing is, they may have already been through that struggle and they can give you some ideas on how to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we find ourselves thinking that we're unique and how come we're having to confront this challenge and that it must be all about me and my ineffectiveness. And yet it's probably something that 99% of all program directors have confronted somewhere
We
along the
gotta
way.
we gotta realize we're not special.
That's
Okay.
right.
We're not special. But again, somebody out there has gone through a similar challenge that you have had, and just having somebody to listen to you, and then have other people to bounce ideas and questions off. There's really very few problems that are insurmountable, whether they're a student or a faculty or an administration problem, just by talking to people and getting wisdom from the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. Find that one or two people in your circle that you can reach out to, and chances are, if they don't know the answer, they're going to know somebody who does.
Yep.
And National Association EMS Educators has a plethora of resources as well out there. Can get connected with people also. So great stuff. Um, so Ryan, are there things that somebody can do to help them gain some experience before they formally step into the role of being a program director?
Sure, I would echo what Dr. Young just said about finding a mentor, and everyone else that's said mentorship is really important. Finding someone who's been there, because we all probably have in some way, fashion, or form. Um, that said, this can be a little bit of a slippery slope, but I would say, get involved at other levels outside of your organization, potentially at the state level, at the national level. Do things to work with your faculty, but also, be involved in projects. And now, as I said that cautiously, it's very easy to drink from a drinking fountain and it quickly turns into a waterfall. So you have to be careful about that involvement, because once you start to get to know people, this EMS is this really small world and people get to know you, and the next thing you know, you're involved in lots of different things that you had no idea were maybe even there. So all positive, but can help with that whole workload thing by becoming overwhelming when you're trying to learn from the beginning. So I guess to answer your question, get involved cautiously, but I think probably the most useful involvement would be to help to work with other people and even if you're not the program director yet, to work with the accreditation process, because as the program director, you're going to have to be familiar with that process and help with the site visit, help with the self-study, help with all of that you can to involve that sort of thing. So
Great. Great, thanks. So Megan, I'm bought the t-shirt now. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid after listening to all of you talk about how great this job is, right? So is there a way for me, is there a standardized process or pathway for me to become a program director? Do I just put my name in the hat? How does that happen?
Yeah, there really isn't a standard process out there unless you are developing one internally, which I would say you can try to standardize something. I know we've talked amongst ourselves about wouldn't it be great to have an assistant all the time, an assistant program director or the clinical coordinator as somebody who's on standby. It's actually a really good idea. And I've seen, doing site visits and visiting programs, seeing some of that. I think it's a best practice having somebody at your side. But I do think if you want to be that person or you're interested in it, you need to first be very explicit about it that I'm really interested in this. Don't sit in the back and watch because much of what a program director does is not seen. I can't emphasize that enough. People think that you're going to see what the program director does, but much of it is unseen. Like I said, you're making all these connections with the communities, you're talking to hospitals, you're going to, different places, you're talking to amongst different parts of your sponsoring organization and your faculty and everything. People don't, and you're collating data and you're bringing together surveys, and much of that is not seen. So you want to be able to make it known that you would like to learn this, so that way there you can come up with, the program director can come up with a regular plan, maybe a weekly 30-minute meeting that you can where you can learn a little bit about being a program director. So I think being explicit is really important. The other thing is, you mentioned earlier about, or you were talking to Bill was talking about the professional development and other things. I can't emphasize enough all of the things that we've done over the years, little workshops and things. Meaning program directors and faculty out there. The NAEMSE offerings at the symposium and on the webinars, in the workshops, accreditation workshops. All of the different conference workshops and everything that you can go to, things that are very practical that you can take home with you, which I think have been things like uh, having difficult conversations, which was a great workshop. I think that was on NEMC. Teaching large groups how to handle certain things that might be a challenge for your program that you want to bring back. And also, your sponsoring institution, if you're part of a college, has professional development on things like student services and counseling and things that might be extremely helpful for that affective domain. So there's so many different things that I think will help build that skill set, but be explicit about your desire so that you know that you're not just watching from afar. You have to be next to that person.
Great. So we've talked about roles and some of the responsibilities of being a program director. We've learned from your experiences that you've shared about the skills and the things that helped prepare you for that leadership role along the way. I want to talk just a little bit now about the mindset of being a program director. Talked about that there's some things that need to shift. So Bill, I wonder if you might talk just a little bit about, the mindset shift that needed to occur perhaps when you went from a faculty member to now leading the program.
Well, I think that Dr. Corry kind of touched on this a while ago. We, as EMS people, and especially I see this in program directors, because there are times that when the program director is the only full-time person in a college or a department or a program, one of the first things that you have to say, and I'm guilty here, I struggle with this, is channel your inner Nancy Reagan and just say no. Because again, one of the things we want is that we want our programs to be successful because we feel like that it depends on us. And to a great degree, it really does. But again, you got to understand that regardless of whether what gender you are, I've never seen a program director with a big red S on their chest of being that Superman or that Superwoman. And so eventually what's going to happen if you say yes to everything is your body's going to say, I know you wanted to do this, but I have other plans. And so one of the first things you got to be able to do is you got to set some boundaries. You got to set some boundaries for yourself so that you protect your health, your physical health, your mental health, and your spiritual health. So I think that's one of the very first things that you got to do. The other thing that I think is critically important, this goes back to the whole issue of mentoring, is I think everybody, and we've got about 100 people online here. I think we could, every one of us, go back and say, this person was my mentor. My question to you is, who are you mentoring right now? One of the big things that you need to do, and I love what Jeff said about this a while ago, is begin searching out and training your replacements. You don't have to tell them that's what you're doing, but you begin to build them up so that at some point in time they come in and they say, or you can say to them, I think you've got some real leadership capabilities. Would you be willing, if I showed you how, to do this little part of being a program director? Not much, but as they succeed, we add more to it. As they make mistakes, we correct them. It's just being an educator, and that's what we do. So I think those are the two things that would be the most valuable to anybody that's coming into this job.
Great. I love it. So Jeff, we've heard a couple of people talk about and mention accreditation as a component of this, especially if you're leading a paramedic program. So when it comes to accreditation, how can a program director ensure that the process is successful for them, and that it creates value for the program?
I think accreditation is probably one of the most wonderful things that we've done in our industry, because it was a bunch of people smarter than us that came together and said, wouldn't it be a good idea if we did these things? And it wards off the evil spirits later on. I also think it's very important for us to realize that accreditation sometimes is more than the COA. If you're an EMT program, a lot of times your state has rules. We have AEMT that you can apply now for accreditation. There's just a lot to it, but it also takes on the burden of, oh my gosh, you have to do this because it's a standard. We love to blame the COA and KHEP of, well, it's a standard, we have to do that. But keep in mind, those are actually the minimum standards. And far too often, we'd like to look at a minimum standard and say, that's what I'm aiming for. If you aim for the minimum standard, you're going to miss it half the time. And I think that's a bad thing. So why aren't you aiming much higher than those minimum standards? And I think that's what you want to do. And you want program success, you have to aim above those minimum standards. Accreditation to me is one of the easiest parts of my job. There's never a time that a report or a self-study or a site visit or anything is a surprise. We knew about it ahead of time. We have plenty of time to gather data. We know what data is supposed to be there. As you get that data, start getting it ready. I have a lot of people tell me the annual report is so difficult, and I don't know what it is. I can have an annual report done in 5 minutes because all the stuff is done. It's ready to go. I just have to kind of put it into the form once it's released and it's done. The biggest delay I have is getting our college to update our outcomes so that Lynn doesn't kick it back and say your outcomes aren't updated. So I always have to wait a couple of days for that. But accreditation is really, it's the minimum standard that we should be going above, not aiming for. That's where the value is. You're going to come into a paramedic program and you're going to say, oh, I want to start to do things better. And actually, this applies to any EMT, AEMT, EMR program. I want to do it better. And okay, so your first class had great results. Okay, do it again. Make sure that's consistent. You don't have to go from a struggling program to a perfect program. All you have to do is better every year. And even the best programs still want to do better every year. And that's what we always have to try to achieve. What did we do good last year? Can we do it better next year? Accreditation, when it comes to just your role as a program director, is really the easiest part of my job because it's well defined. It's simple. State regulation is the next easiest because it's the rules. You got to follow the rules. Sometimes the most difficult thing is when your dean comes to you and say, hey, we had a report that's due tomorrow. And I know I forgot to tell you about it 3 weeks ago, but they still want that. And unfortunately, that happens more often than I'd like to admit. but it's still doable. If you've got all your information there and accreditation helps me with that, I have to know my student outcomes well ahead of time. When that report comes in, I'm ready to give it. Yeah, it's a little burden to sit down and actually do it, but it's a very easy thing. Accreditation really kind of makes my whole job a lot easier because it's predictable. I know what it is, and it's a good standard. It's the minimum standard. I think that's the one thing we always need to do is we can go above that anytime we want to.
Great. So Megan, I want to ask you a little bit about the what changes did you potentially experience when you went from being a faculty member instructor where you're kind of a colleague to now you become the boss? And what do people need to know about that transition?
Yeah. And it's funny because the word the boss never really kind of settles in. Like you don't feel like the boss of other people, but you're certainly the head coach of the program. And that's the analogy I like the best is the head coach. If you think about sports or if you have any, familiarity with the structure, a head coach is not usually a Hall of Famer athlete. They're not usually, it's a totally different skill set, right? They usually have a skill set that oversees the development of all of the coaching staff and then all of the players, and they call all the shots and they make the plays. So I think um, one of the big things that I think it was surprising to me, not so much in being quote unquote the boss, but just the um, being successful as a program director, is learning the art of negotiation. You really
Mhm.
have to learn the art of negotiation. And I think the amount of communication that is necessary to be successful. And I say that letting everybody know with full transparency that I feel like I've need a lot of work on this lately. When you have changes in staff or changes going on, you can really feel like, wow, I've let go of this a little bit. I need to get in there and communicate more with with all the people. And this is coming from somebody who also teaches. So it's not like I don't teach as well, but you're teaching and you're overseeing all of this at the same time. And I think that art of negotiation is really important. And just a quick example would be we had an issue in our at one time where we had this great OR experience, and we had a little glitch happen where suddenly there was this, well, what are they doing here? And so we gathered some data from the field, from the students who had graduated and their input on what the OR did for them. We brought it to them. And I also talked to them about this isn't a place to, pass plastic through the hole. This is an airway lab where they'll, even if they can observe, you start little, and the next thing you know, their foot was in the door again. And the next thing you know, they were full on in and doing all of the skills. And we created this much better airway module out of it. And we could have just thrown up our hands and said, well, they don't want us anymore. But instead, it was the art of negotiation. And my medical director got involved, and we kind of really felt that it was so valuable for our students, we couldn't give up on it. So I think that was the thing that really made the difference. I didn't have to think about that when I was faculty. I have to think about that as program director.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, right? I use the analogy of an Oreo cookie. I think everybody knows what an Oreo cookie is, but a program director, you're kind of that really good sweet stuff that's in the middle, right? And you find yourself with people, students, faculty, other people that are perhaps below you, but there's a whole lot of people that are above you, deans, provosts, vice provosts, vice presidents, all these other people. And Megan, I know you spent a little bit of time, at least if I recall correctly, in a dean type role.
Yeah.
So in this in-between role as a program director, are there things that are important for educational leaders to know about building trust and credibility with the people that are above you, but maintaining that with the people and where you have come from?
I think it's trying to understand a bit of where people are coming from and what they need. When someone lashes out at you, something's behind that. Why is this? And oh, I see. The person above you has told you you need to cut 60% of your classes, and ours are, and so I need to explain to you how I can help you with, well, maybe we could move this class and we can move this one and increase the enrollment. So you have to, again, the art of negotiation, but it also involves knowing a little bit about what it is that person needs. So I think that has really helped when I was interim dean for a bit.
Great. So guys, we've covered a lot of ground, and I know we're getting a little bit short here on time to keep this at 1 hour, and I want to give each of you a final comment to share. So a couple of things that I would just ask each of you, and then we'll kind of go around the horn here. But I wondered if you might kind of close with what you found to be the most rewarding aspect of serving in your program director or leadership role from an educator capacity, and then perhaps a take-home point, something that you wish that you knew when you started this journey that you didn't know, that you wish somebody had told you about. If you would try to address one or both of those in the last few minutes that we have here, that would be great. Jeff, I thought we would start with you. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure whatsoever. So I think the one thing that I want to encourage people to do, because really when we're looking at this, the title of this really lends itself more to the guy who wants to be the program director than the guy who is, or gal who is, or wants to be. What we have to do as program directors is make the role of program director something that is really kind of a good thing to do. And I see this with students who come in and they're just disgruntled. And we find a lot of people just arguing about, oh, I'm sick and tired of being in this field. I don't like doing all the work of the same frequent flyers all day long. And I've actually had students who quit class because they're tired of listening to the students talk bad about the profession, and it's a profession they want to get into. And obviously it's not a good one. And I think we have to change that. Our mindset has to be positivity. We have got to always kind of look at the standpoint of what we do is, yes, we have daily challenges. There are going to be times we're more inundated with problems than we'd like to be. But in the end, what we do is really good and really important. And we want to bring people into that fold. We need program directors very, very badly. And what we need even more is really good program directors very badly. There are programs out there right now struggling because they can't find good leaders. And they're out there. We just have to encourage them to want to be those leaders. From my standpoint, that is really one of the best things about being in this program director role. I have had an opportunity to travel around and meet people from all over the country. I have good friends all over this country. I have people that I can pick up the phone and talk to on a moment's notice when I have issues. And the number of phone calls I get on a weekly basis from people all over the country says that they feel the same way about me. And I think that's great. I love the networking and the working together. We're not alone. And the more we work together, the more we do this in a positive standpoint, that we're going to make a difference and we're going to improve EMS through education. That's our mission and that's our goal. And that's what I want other people to kind of look at is if you're an educator out there right now and you're thinking, I want to be a program director, look at the opportunities that you've got ahead of you by shifting a role a little bit. That's what we want. We want people to come in and say, I want to take on that challenge of being the director. I think it's very rewarding. I think it's something that we need really good people to do. And I hope more people will accept that challenge.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Ryan, how about from your perspective?
I guess the quick thing is that imposter syndrome is real. I think we've all had it. We've all been there. We all feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough for this job. But you're in good company. We're all there to help you reach out to any of us. Also, probably the most rewarding thing, or one quick thing before that, is that learn the difference between being a presenter and an educator. That's a big part of education and what that means. But lastly, the greatest thing for me is learning and being able to see people flourish. And that means all of it, not just be successful, but to actually flourish in this role, in this profession.
And sometimes the most rewarding circumstances are the ones that were the biggest struggles, right, along the way, whether or not it's a student or a faculty member or whatever. So great. Thanks for sharing that. Megan, how about from you?
There's so much rewarding about
Mhm.
this job, really. Again, that's not to, say it isn't challenging and whatever, but it's the idea that you are impacting an large volume of patients out there because each student that goes out there is going to impact a number of patients um, and to be able to be part of change like that is that's a very rewarding aspect, and just the people you get to work with, all different personalities for better or for worse, and it's great. I mean, I think um, my advice would be, if you're out there struggling, it can feel at first like it's lonely, but in some ways that's our own doing. So I think it's get out there. There's a lot of good people to meet, even if it's not in your own small circle. If you have a very small circle, you can see there's a huge network of people that can help. So
And Bill, how about from you?
So the biggest takeaway I would say is if you are an educator and you want to see, you want to take this job for a trial run, go to your program director and say, I want to help you. You will quickly become their new best friend. And you just simply ask them, what can I do to make your job easier? Okay. Do you need help with accreditation things? Do you need help with dealing with state regulations? Put your toes in the water first before you jump in the deep end. The second thing I would tell you is, again, this goes back to what I said earlier. The resources are out there now. I mean, we have incredible educational programs for paramedics. We don't just send them out and go be a paramedic. No, they go through months or years of training and education to become that. Do the same thing. You got a credit card, you got NAEMSE, you've got webinars, you've got all these other resources that are available. Start your education now.
Excellent. Well, everyone, I just want to say thank you for joining the panel and myself today. Special thanks to Rio from NAEMSE for helping pull all of this together today. And to each of the panelists, Dr. Corry, Dr. Young, Dr. Batenhorst, Mr. McDonald, thank you for sharing your journey as program directors and your experiences. Greatly appreciated. It's been my pleasure to have the opportunity to facilitate today's conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and we will see you all next time. Thank you.